this country. You built this country. The middle class built this country.
He never mentions hydrogen.
You never what?
Never mentions the hydrogen stuff I've got over here. That's the real solution. If he wants to shut down the oil industrial complex, you got to explain to people, well, how are you going to keep running your car?
Yeah.
And the
I mean,
way
what
you
they're
do
passing right now is the PV cars.
you mean electric?
Yeah.
That isn't a solution.
Uh-huh.
They're all made with lithium. Over half of the global supply of lithium has already been consumed just by the cell phone industry.
Uh-huh.
Now, the car companies, for the last half of the lithium that's down in Central America, in one of the few remaining ecosystems that's being destroyed, to get the last of the lithium, then once that's gone, the whole...
water vapor as an exhaust?
You mean with hydrogen?
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
So we get oxygen?
You want to, you get water vapor. When you bring the hydrogen and
H2O,
oxygen,
right?
H2O, and you would want to collect it in a nice stainless steel or glass vessel and take that condensed water in and drink it because it's purer than rainwater.
Oh, sweet.
Coming out of your engine.
Are you local here?
No, I'm from Georgia most recently, but I'm here trying to tell them.
What do they call it, Skype stuff?
Yeah, sure, I do Skype.
Because I'm a producer of a local television show.
Whoa, a local television show.
Yeah.
What kind of, well, I'd love to talk to you about that. I talk to anybody. Do you know about the amendment I'm talking about, though?
No.
Because that's really important.
I've been focused on I'm a union electrician, so I've been focused on my buddy Joe Casey, who's the international IBEW rep for this region, is working on the wind power in the Gulf of Maine.
Well, I'm in the wind business myself.
Yeah, well, so we built that Seabrook plant, and that was built for 2 reactors, right?
Yeah.
So the transmission lines and the high yard exist for 2 reactors.
Uh-huh.
They're estimating that right off of Seabrook Station and Kittery, Maine, right there's 32,000 megawatts of wind power, which Seabrook's 1,500 at max capacity. And we already have the existing transmission lines, so we can put the rectifying yard right in the existing high yard because that Eversource owns it, and it's already there. We don't have to put it in, not in my backyard. We already get the lines are there, and it was designed for 2 plants, and there's only 1. So we can take Seabrook, the fuck off line, excuse my French, and replace that with the wind, and then we can add the additional power right to the, in this case, the New England grid, because New Hampshire is exporting power right now. We don't need additional.
And you can also, this concept was developed by a professor at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst, who was a former superintendent of shipbuilding for the United States Navy. And before he did that, he was designing the hulls of nuclear submarines. Well, this is a hull, like a submarine. There's people, a crew that live down here, but they're not weapons, they're electrolyzers. They're taking the electricity, passing it through the seawater, making hydrogen, putting it in a pipeline, and sending it to shore, or picking it up with a tanker. And then these are larger types of wind ship systems that you could put out at sea. And the reason you want to put these out at sea is they protect the ocean ecosystem because you can't get fish nets down there. I've got all this equipment down there.
All right.
So it keeps the fishing, it will provide a sanctuary for the fish and marine organisms.
Well, anytime we have any objects out there, that's what the smaller fish, crustaceans.
Yeah. Well, there's not
algae.
many fish left now, unfortunately.
Yeah, but it develops an area for them to, it's like having a transition zone in the forest. Most of the wildlife lives at the edge, not in the forest itself, but in the transition zone. So they can go in the forest and come out for the food.
Well, although the cheapest way to make hydrogen is not electrolysis, it's from, as Henry Ford demonstrated with these cars, the cheapest way to make it is from cannabis.
From what?
Cannabis plants.
Oh, wow.
That has the cheapest source of hydrogen. They're incredibly hydrogen rich. And so Henry Ford was making fuels in the 1930s that were less than half the cost of gasoline from cannabis. And he was not only making the fuels, he was making automotive plastics that were 10 times stronger than steel. They were completely non-toxic. And yet nobody seems to know about that because all the oil-based plastics...
Well, they took the alcohol commission back then and they changed it to They wanted to harass Mexicans and black people, so they made cannabis illegal in every way, shape, or form.
Well, it was to keep the oil companies in business because Henry Ford was going to put them out of business.
Yeah, I saw more what politically happened was it started in the South. You know, we had the immigration problem, then the business.
Well, we
took
had
advantage,
immigration problems
and they didn't go home afterwards.
And
was
we got
problem.
immigration
so we
problems
made something
now.
that they used illegal. That way, we could facilitate that process.
Yeah, but that didn't. The immigrants didn't threaten the oil companies like hydrogen does.
The way they passed it politically was it happened in the South first, then they got the drugs and they passed it all in the South under that premise first, as opposed to the oil company, and then they slowly expanded it from there. And then they made everything to do with cannabis illegal, whether it was the ropes that we had, the paper that we were using, and the process that you're describing as well.
And yet, if they had not done that, if they had let Henry Ford and others just use cannabis, we wouldn't have the climate change problem we have now. Mm-hmm. We wouldn't have the chemical contamination problem we have now. Yep. The most serious problems that are making our Earth uninhabitable are from oil, coal, and nuclear power. That's what's poisoning the entire planet. Yep. And yet, how do you shut those things down? Because the oil companies own the major banks.
Yeah.
They own the basic pharmaceutical drug industry. They set it up.
They're pushing for that. I mean, they're saying there's a gigawatt of power between Cape Cod of wind power between Cape Cod and Nova Scotia. A gigawatt of power is 10% of the U.S. energy supply, the electric supply, right from wind power off this coast. But the problem is they don't have the infrastructure or the transmission lines built to make that power available to where it's needed.
Well, they're building oil infrastructure. That's why. Yeah. They're not putting in hydrogen pipelines. They're putting in oil pipelines.
Transmission structures, that's what you're on.
It's the hydrogen that's the answer. And you can modify everybody's existing engine. You don't have to go buy a new car. You can take a Model T and modify it to run on hydrogen.